All right, so let's talk a little bit about one of the most important Supreme Court cases that came out of Jefferson's presidency early on in his presidency, and this is the case of Marbury versus Madison, because it does establish what is considered to be probably the most important power that the Supreme Court has. Um, William Marbury was supposed to be appointed as a justice of the peace, right? And this was at the end of John Adams's presidency. There was the Judiciary Act of 1801 that passed by Congress that created a whole bunch of new positions for federal judges. And so Adams, on his way out, decided that he was going to pack the courts, right, with as much Federalist federal judges as possible now that Jefferson was coming in. And so he spent a lot of time all night kind of putting all of these commissions together. And these are the legal documents that granted you this position. It was so late, right, that these were known as midnight judges because of the late hour. And a lot of these commissions didn't actually get to be delivered to their proponents once Adams' presidency was over. So now Jefferson comes in. James Madison is the new Secretary of State. He has these commissions that still haven't been delivered. And Jefferson tells Madison to just forget it, right? These commissions are no longer valid. I'm the president now. I'm not going to give these out. So William Marbury never received his commission. Because of that, he demanded that Jefferson and Madison give him his commission, that he was appointed to Justice of the Peace, and they refused. So he decided that he was going to take this case to the Supreme Court, right? And the Supreme Court at this time, the Chief Justice was John Marshall, who was another Federalist judge. And he figured that John Marshall would kind of sympathize with him and he would be able to get his job. So much to Marbury's chagrin, though, when John Marshall heard the case and kind of analyzed what was going on, he did not rule in favor of Marbury. Even though he kind of agreed that Marbury should have gotten his position, he decided to rule against him. And this was because he thought that the ability for the court to be able to force anyone to do something in order to settle the case was unconstitutional. And this was something that was known as a writ of mandamus, right? This writ of mandamus kind of granted the Supreme Court the power to force someone to do something. It basically asked the court to force Madison to give him the commission. And Marshall said that that was unconstitutional. It was something that was granted under the Judiciary Act of 1789, but it's something that Congress had no power to do in the first place. And so even though, in a sense, John Marshall was kind of diminishing the role of the Supreme Court by saying that the writ of mandamus was unconstitutional, but he also increased the power of the Supreme Court because with that decision, he, for the first time, introduced this idea of judicial review, that the Supreme Court had the authority to analyze these laws and these cases, and that if it somehow went against the Constitution, which technically was the supreme law of the land, then these laws were then nullified or void, right? Because the Constitution was supreme over anything else. And so that established the power of judicial review. And the power of judicial review probably is the most powerful of the authorities of the Supreme Court. And it also increased another check upon the legislative and executive branches, that now the judicial branch had this ability to uphold the constitutionality of all laws. And so that pretty much sums up Marbury versus Madison, right? Establishing the role of judicial review and the significance of judicial review in a historical sense is very important. All right, so next time